welcome back to the channel. Max here with Guns, Gear, and Coffee. Today I wanted to take the time to talk about one of my favorite rifles and at the same time talk about one of my favorite gun companies. Today I'm going to talk about the Ruger 1022 Takedown, show you how I carry it, the application of why I got it, and its capabilities. The X22 Backpacker stock by Magpul is packed full of features, and pretty excited to show it off. So before I go any farther, this is the bag that the rifle comes in, the 1022 Takedown. I did buy the 50th anniversary edition. I didn't buy it because it was the 50th anniversary. It was just the one that was in front of me. I bought them when they were brand new to the market about 3 years back, and think to this day, using just standard rotary magazines, I've had zero failures out of the rifle, and I run that thing extremely dirty. I don't run it suppressed or anything at the moment, but just running it over and over without cleanings in between, which I don't absolutely condone, but I like to see what my guns are capable of in between cleanings. I have my carry gun and my defensive rifles, and I keep those pretty immaculate. Otherwise, my other guns, I beat them up, and I see what they can take, and for the most part, I've been disappointed only a handful of times. So just jump into the bag real quick. I'm not going to really do an in-depth review on the bag. I will say the stitching on the MOLLE webbing, although I've never had any MOLLE pouches attached to the front, the stitching is fraying down here, but it's cool that they give you a little bit of a MOLLE panel inside this pocket. You do get two dividers, so if you were running BX25 magazines, you would be able to stow, I believe, two on either side and keep them relatively organized. And not only that, you do have a whole front section outside of those two pouches. Moving on up here, this is just a giant open pouch. It is padded, so you could put a handgun in there and it'd be relatively well protected. This one is as well padded. Comes with just a basic carry strap. I believe at one point it did have one of those slider pads. I don't know if I removed it or if this is even actually the right one, because I have taken the strap off over time and put new straps on, and not because it broke, just because I didn't really use the bag. I was trying to find a purpose to use the bag. I don't even store the rifle in this bag. Inside you have your main compartment where you would be able to fit your stock and your receiver. You have two smaller pockets over here. I would use this one for like a guide rod or a cleaning rod. And then you have this right here that you could fit your barrel and your whole barrel assembly, your fore-end, stuff like that. So moving on beyond the bag, it's going to be the last time I talk about that one. We'll talk about how I actually carry the rifle and how I store the rifle. This is my Kelty WinDriver ST. Haven't really put too many miles on this bag, however it is an extremely comfortable bag. I have a more in-depth review coming up on this after I get a little bit more miles and usage out of it. It is an older bag. It was gifted to me by my mom that she used to do a ton of backpacking. I do like it because it looks relatively civilian. I'm not a big proponent for civilians looking military and stuff like that, especially if you were in a WROL situation. So this is my bag. I call it my inch bag, my I'm not coming home bag. Again, I'll do a whole review on this. This has everything to sustain me from 3 to 5 days inside of it, food wise, shelter wise, fire starting capabilities. And beyond that, I've got stuff in there that would help me settle in if I wasn't coming home, if I found a secure location to move to. It would allow me, I have seeds in there so that I could actually grow my own food if I was going to do a homesteading instead of looting to live, which would be my ideal means of living, is not looting but providing my own resources. So we'll go ahead and jump into the bag and just show you how I store it, but that's the only thing that I'm going to show you on the bag currently. It does have 3 buckles that you got to undo to be able to access it. You got this whole removable flap up top, and then it's got these 2 zips here. Well, they're not zips, they're pull cords, but it's nice because this whole pack's waterproof, and it keeps it pretty watertight, even if it was getting more than just rain. So this bag has 2 dividers right here back here. This is actually designed for a camelback. but I run my Camelback on the other side so that the rifle's directly up the back on the back side of the pack. I prefer it more that way. So here's the rifle. Set that down, and I'm going to move this all to the side. Again, a review's coming up in the future on this bag. I have a couple other reviews that are going to happen before this, so that probably won't be anytime soon. I'm trying to plan a little bit of an excursion over the summer. I'm thinking either Montana or Iowa, just to get some long distance treks, see some new sights that isn't Ohio. And I'm going to take that bag with me and see how it treats me out in the field. But moving on beyond the bag and future plans, here's a gun. This is the 50th anniversary, 1964 to 2014. I believe 2014 is the year these guns came out. And as soon as it came to market, I think it was a matter of a month to 2 months before I purchased it. I saw it, I liked it. This stock wasn't even a thing at that time, but I still like the idea of the rifle, for it to be able to pack down as small as it does and fit in that case, which I've never really used the case. So I'm going to start on the inside of this rifle and, outside of this rifle and work my way in. So first I'll show how to assemble the gun. You have, and this is with the stock kit on it. This is Magpul X22 a Ruger X22 Backpacker stock, and you can see why they call it a backpacker stock. It does completely stow on itself. It has additional storage capabilities inside the rifle. So this isn't just a gun, and that I think that's why I like it, is they utilize unused space, and I think Magpul's extremely good at that. They use quality materials. Their designs are very appealing. I mean, in the sense of they look good, but they're also appealing in the fact that they're multifunctional most time. Like, you look at their AR-15 grips, they always have storage, and they have different adapters that go in the bottom that you could store lubricant in for your rifle, or an additional battery, or you can just get a completely hollowed out grip and throw whatever you want to in it, as does this one. So to disassemble and assemble the gun, actually disassemble it from its stored state and assemble it into its functional state, you depress these two buttons that are on either side, pull the stock out, and it just rests there in that grommet. It is rubber. I wouldn't apply very much pressure to it. I don't think that it would necessarily snap, but to maintain the integrity and keep it working the way that it's supposed to, take barrel out. It's going to go in at a somewhat 45-degree angle. I'll go ahead and clear the gun. All my magazines are loaded. I know there's not one in the chamber, but there's a lot of safety Nazis out there, so we'll just say lock bolt to rear. Although to assemble it, I've noticed that you don't have to lock bolt to rear. However, to disassemble it, you do have to have the bolt at least disengaged from the breech face. So you'll push it down. After it's been set in there at a 45-degree angle, you push it down, give it a twist, and it's together. So, I also have the X22 Backpacker optic mount that only works with this stock system. Regrettably, it would be cool if it worked with their hunter systems that they have out there for the Takedown, and they very well may. As far as I'm aware, they don't. Another thing that I like for the optic mount is by removing your red dot, you're still able to use your iron sights through the optic mount itself. So you don't have to entirely remove the optic mount, just remove the optic off of the optic mount. On here I have some 550 paracord, and I know it's not really like going to be the most comfortable sling. This is just something, and the reason why I threw this on here is to have emergency cordage. It works as a sling. It's a cool place to store some extra cordage. I think this is about a 5-foot line. I could run it as a big sling. I could run it as a little sling. I have a Pruix hitch back here, so I could slide this down and greatly increase the length of the sling. So, and yeah, I mean, it works out. I mean, it's a makeshift sling, something. I think this thing's like a 4 or 5 pound rifle. So, I mean, it's not stupid heavy. It's a 22. You know, what do you really need a sling for on a 22 unless, you know, you don't really. Moving up to the optic and the optic mount. Again, I went with this optic mount instead of receiver mounted optic because no matter what kind of takedown action it is, I'm always skeptical that the return to zero is going to be shifted by removing that barrel and putting it back into place, because the barrel will be disengaging and meeting up differently with the receiver almost every time that it's put in, especially if you were to tighten the shroud up a little bit, which does hold, does contain the barrel a little bit tighter or looser depending on preference or manufacturer specs. So the red dot that I have up here is a Vortex Venom 3 MOA red dot. Relatively cheap option. I mean, it's $209 if you want to call that cheap in comparison to a Trijicon or an Aimpoint. You know, for a 22, I didn't see any real need to put on something that was going to be $400, $600. I already had the Vortex Venom. I purchased it for my Ultimac rail on my AK, and it ended up not doing co-witnessing, so I figured this would be a perfect option to actually throw on something that's small and useful. How I have the red dot zeroed for this is if you zero it at 50 yards, if you hold at the top of the dot at 100, or if you hold at the top of the dot at 25 yards, you'll contact exactly where you want to. If you hold at the bottom of the dot at 100 yards, you'll hit just about an inch low. So it's more of a 75 yard zero. It's like a 25 to 75 yard zero, especially with that 3 MOA red dot. You move down to a 2 MOA red dot, that's going to change just a little bit. Maybe not even enough that your eyes could actually pick it up, because a lot of people have stigmatisms while looking through red dots. I'm one of those people. I do have astigmatism, but this one, the 3 MOA, tends to work extremely well for me. The only magazines that I run are the factory rotary magazines. While running BX25 magazines out of this gun, I had it didn't matter on my ammunition choice, whether it was hollow points, lead, round nose, anything of the sort. I was getting malfunctions and kind of nosedives because the fitment of the BX25 magazines is not as tight. You know, these have a pretty tight tolerance. When they go in there, there's really not a whole lot of wiggle to them. When you put in the BX25s, there's quite a bit of wiggle to them, and that's going to create reliability issues just like inside every gun. If the bullet isn't pointed directly at the throat like it's supposed to be, it's not likely going to go in there, and if it is, it's going to scuff up the round, and that's going to hinder your accuracy actually. So, but again, we're talking about 22 long rifle. I'm just talking about firearms in general. But on the outside of the rifle, that's pretty much it. I run this gun stock. The factory trigger is nothing really to complain about. After it gets dirty, you can feel a pretty sandy reset and a sandy trigger pull. But I've noticed that even taking my receiver apart, if I just blast it with some gun cleaner or CLP, it takes the sandiness out. It works just fine. I've never had any issues with the factory configuration of it. If it isn't broke, I'm not going to fix it. But yeah, disassemble the gun. We'll go ahead and talk about that because everything else that I'm going to talk about is going to be contained in this back section of the rifle. So to remove the barrel from the receiver, you'll have to lock bolt to rear, or you can barely pull back on the receiver, and under this fore end there's a dimple that you push forward, pull back on the receiver just a little bit, twist it off the same way that you twisted it on, lift out, and then you're ready to store the rifle back in its collapsed configuration. But I'm going to take this off, set it to the side, and I'll go ahead and minimize this sling again. Alright, so I'll start at the biggest compartment and work my way up. So the biggest compartment, this cheek riser is replaceable. If you weren't running any kind of optic or something like that, you could take this cheek riser off and you could put on a more flat one that is included with the stock. But inside this compartment, there is capability to carry 3 fully loaded magazines, or if you wanted to, and this is all advertised on Ruger's website or their video page that they did, or you can remove this divider and you can carry a 50 round box of 22 long rifle. You can fit that in there, or even if you wanted to fill up a baggie with 22 rifle, you could, or 22 long rifle, you could definitely fit much more ammunition inside this space. It's a pretty wide open space. What I carry on board, I do carry a loaded magazine in the gun, or inside the receiver itself, and then I carry 3 fully loaded magazines inside the stock. I have all of my magazines identified by paint on the bottom, except for this one. It is a new one, and I don't have any of them in there. My hypersonic or my sonic ammunition is identified by yellow. That's standard velocity. I always shoot CCI standard velocity. For the price, it's pretty consistent, and it does just fine, especially out of a semi-auto. And this one, it's going to be loaded up with the same exact stuff, CCI standard velocity. But my blue magazines, I load that up with Eli subsonic semi-auto. Again, I don't fire this suppressed or anything, but in case I wanted the round to be just a little bit quieter, those subsonics, the semi-auto subsonics, are about as loud as a clap. That's the only way I could really describe it. So in the magazines that I carry in the gun, I have 40 rounds, and then I carry a small baggie of ammunition that has an additional 10 rounds, which makes for an even 50 rounds on board. And that's just my OCD kicking in. Why have 40 when you can have a nice round number like 50? So in that divider that I took out, it could be stowed here in the back, so it still opens that cavity a little bit. So pretty cool feature. I wish that this front one did that just like that. That'd be ingenious, because I don't know, there's some 22 suppressors that are just small enough that would be able to fit inside that channel. And if somebody wanted to minimize the footprint of having a suppressed rifle instead of carrying the suppressor on the end of the barrel, or the suppressor in a separate pouch, that would leave the options open right there. Anyways, I mean, anybody could take a Dremel tool and Dremel that out a little bit, but then, you know, you avoid any manufacturer warranties that you may have because you altered the stock. Moving on to, I'll give you guys a close-up of what the inside of that looks like. Pretty wide open, lots of storage, and there's even clearance up here, so if you wanted to mount that stuff up on top, you didn't have to be flat with this right here. You could mount it up, and this would still close depending on what you put in there. The next compartment that they have is another really cool compartment, pretty ingenious. It's a watertight compartment. You can see the orange O-ring on there. Keep water and moisture out. You know, pretty self-explanatory with that, and it is pretty tight to come out, pretty tight to press back in. I like that. It's not going to just fall out while you're shooting the rifle, and especially since 22 has no recoil anyways. Up in here, I keep not literally not just watertight or stuff that needs to stay dry. I mean, I do have tinder in there. I mean, it's just cotton. It's not Vaseline covered or anything, but it can still be used as tinder nonetheless. I more put that in there to minimize on the rattle of the contents of in here, and this stuff's usually pretty hard to get out. See if it doesn't all dump out. In here I carry, again, more cotton. I carry an Allen key. I actually carry 2 Allen keys. One is to disassemble the rifle. I can take the receiver out of the stock, and I can take the barrel out of the stock if I needed to, just with that Allen key. And then I have this Allen key that goes to the screw plates on this, or the screws on this butt pad. And that's because there's just and this isn't advertised by Magpul, but there is a little bit of extra storage back here. And since I was already utilizing all the space inside this rifle, I figured why not take up that much space inside here to access that much more space. And I'll show you that here next. Moving on to the last 3 things that I got in there. I got a mini Bic lighter. I swear by Bics. A lot of people like Zippos because they're windproof. I like Bics because they can get wet and they typically still work. Might have a little bit of a dry out period, and they last forever. I think this one's like almost as old as the rifle. Got one of these little cheapo knives. I mean, all it's got on it is like bottle opener / can opener, screwdriver, nail file, and a small knife. And in my experience, these knives, I mean, they're always like razor sharp. I don't cut anything with this knife specifically just so it's sharp if I ever need to refer to this knife. Which if I have to use that knife to cut something, some shit's really going down. Carry 2 water purification tablets. Each one of these tablets will purify 1 liter of water. You know, there's alternate methods of purifying water. These are like a last ditch effort. You know, I could scoop up a camelback out of a pond, throw one of these in here, and it's not going to taste the greatest, but it's not going to kill me or make me sick. So they're so small that, you know, there's really no reason not to have a couple of those tucked away just about anywhere you can fit them. So we'll move on to the last section of this stock, and that's this butt pad back here. I've already pre-loosened these screws for the most part. Now what I think would be pretty cool is if I was able to find an Allen key that was just about that size right there, and this size was one side and the other side right here would be this side. So have 2 Allen keys on one small L. I think that would be a pretty phenomenal way to save a little bit of space in here. However, in all my search efforts, I have not found anything that comes close to that. So that's what I'm stuck with right there. I guess I should finish what I'm doing before I put that down. And back here, this is just like, I really wanted to build this out as a more substantial fishing kit, but right now as it stands, it's pretty disappointing. I mean, I don't have any lures in there. I mean, I've got some basic fish hooks, and you know, you can bait your own fish hooks. First thing that falls out is an extra 1632 battery for my Vortex Venom optic. That's still, I've had that Vortex Venom since little after I purchased the rifle, but I put it on after I bought the Backpacker stock. That's when I ended up putting it on this gun. I've had that Vortex Venom for 3 years. It's still running on the same battery. I've messed up and left it turned on a couple times, and I've never had a failure with it, and never really been disappointed by it, other than the fact that it didn't co-witness with my iron sights on my AK with the Ultimac rail. So